everyone, welcome back to my channel. Who likes this outfit still? Me. Because I am mass filming tonight, and I don't feel like changing, so I'm gonna go with it. I am finally getting around to doing my October wrap-up. I'm only like 2.5 weeks late. And you know what? I mean, it was bound to happen. I had a fairly good track record for keeping up with my video schedule, and I failed this month. So, here we go. These are the books that I read in October, I think. So the first 3 books that I got to in the month of October kind of set the tone for creepy October horror reads, and those were Fear the Drowning Deep by Sarah Glenn Marsh, A Darkly Beating Heart by Lindsay Smith, and Amy Chelsea Stacy D by Mary G. Thompson. All 3 of those I already reviewed, so I will leave that linked down below if you guys are curious about my thoughts. All 3 of them were very, very different books, but all of them kind of fit that like creepy, getting into the Halloween spirit vibe. The next book that I got to was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and that was A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir. This is the sequel to An Ember in the Ashes, and I'm pretty sure everyone read this last month. I love An Ember in the Ashes. I love the world that Sabaa Tahir has developed and set up for us. I love the characters in this. I think that I'm going to be in the minority in this opinion. I feel like this kind of suffered from second book syndrome. But at the same time, I think the first book also did too. I think her pacing is just a little bit off for me in this book, because in the first book, we kind of have a goal that we're trying to get to, and by the end of that book, we still have not achieved said goal. I'm not going to say any spoilers, so don't worry. But it kind of set up the tone of the world and the characters and just kind of what is to come in the story. This book, I feel like, did the same thing. I just personally wanted to see more actually happen in this. I feel like we developed a lot about the characters and a lot about what's going on in the world politically. So I think that that was definitely good, but I still feel like I wanted a little bit more to actually happen in this. It definitely has that kind of they're traveling from point A to point B feeling for me. And I may be alone in that. I love it. I gave it 4 stars. I still love the world. I love the characters. Helene is starting to be like one of my favorite chick characters to read about. She was awesome in the first book, and I knew she was just going to get more awesome as the series continued, and I was not let down in that. So those are just kind of my overall thoughts on this book. Next book that I got to in October was also a sequel, and that is The Invasion of the Tierling by Erica Johansson. This is a sequel to The Queen of the Tierling. This is an adult high fantasy series that I think is very different from the concept of high fantasy. It definitely still has the political and the like knights and castles vibe that high fantasy generally has. But this story has such a unique take on it. This is set pretty much in the future of our real world, after pretty much the collapse of society, and it is being rebuilt kind of primally, and we are pretty much back to like the Renaissance period. And I didn't really realize that until this book switches perspectives into modern day living. But it so abruptly changed that I was listening to the audiobook. I thought that my audiobook had glitched and that I was listening to a completely different book. Because I went from like castles and knights and queens and princesses to all of a sudden a girl in her apartment texting her fiance or her husband. And I was like, what happened? And it does get explained. I just love the take on it. This series has just stuck with me way more than a lot of other series have for some reason. I really recommend this if you give it a go. It's very different than normal fantasy, and I really liked it, so I gave this 4 stars. The next book that I got to is The Women in the Walls by Amy Lukavics. This was supposed to be my like Halloween like horror story. I was just in the mood to read creepy, scary books. This is a very cliche, haunted, old creepy house story where it's these girls, it's a girl and her cousin who live in this really old Victorian house, and they're completely like secluded there. But a lot of creepy things start happening. The girl's mother just kind of walks into the woods and disappears, and everybody doesn't really bat an eye at it. So it's a lot of stuff like that, and you start to hear voices in the house. My first issue with this book was the fact that you can't fully grasp what time period it's set in. And I think that was intentional because it's supposed to span a long period of time. But for me, it was just confusing, and it took me out of the story just because it's set very much in modern day. These girls go from dropping the F-bomb and talking about texting and the internet to not really having a social life or not having like a concept of how people actually act in today's society. So I think it was intentional, but for me it just didn't really work. Also, it was a little slow paced for a horror story for me. I wanted more action to happen. That being said, give it until the very end scene. It's a very short book, so if you're gonna read it, stick it out until the end. The end scene of this book just like redeemed it from being like a 0-star book for me to being it was a 2-star book. I didn't think it was amazing, but the end scene was just so satisfying. It is so disgustingly grotesque and horror and gory. It was just so messed up that it completely made up for the rest of the book for me. So if you're reading it and kind of having doubts, just read until the end just to see if it's your cup of tea. But unfortunately, it was kind of a 2-star book for me just because I feel like there wasn't enough of the build-up to make up for the end scene. So, those are my thoughts on that. The next book that I got to is The Reader by Tracy Chee. This book is easily my favorite book of the month, if not... It's like top 5 of the year, guys. This is a book that I saw some hype for. I know a lot of people did tags based on this book, and it's a debut book for this year of a new fantasy series, and I just don't think that it's getting the love that it deserves. It's kind of advertised as like a world where reading doesn't really exist and books don't exist, and that's pretty much all you know about it going in. This book is so much more than that, and I just want so many more people to read it just so that I can talk about it with them. But yes, this is set in a fantasy world where reading just doesn't exist. Nobody even knows that it's a thing. And this girl ends up with a book, and she doesn't even know what it is, but it is left to her by her parents who kind of mysteriously get murdered in the past, and she ends up going on the run to try and find her only remaining relative, her aunt, who got kidnapped in front of her. And on this journey, she runs into a boy who is completely mute, who also kind of has some crazy fighting abilities, and their relationship is just so well done. Their friendship is just so believable, and I love those two characters together. But along this way, it becomes pretty much like a swashbuckling pirate fantasy story. I didn't know that I liked that type of story until I read this book. I loved this book. I think I might do a whole review video about this book, or maybe when the sequel comes out, I will do like a recap video about it just because I loved it so much. This is the book about books that I've always wanted. Storytelling in this book is done so well because not only are we learning about the story that's actually happening, we are learning about the story that is in this mysterious book that this girl has, and it's also told through kind of tribute or memorial type stories of characters' pasts, and the concept of storytelling in this book is done so beautifully, and it's done in so many different ways that everything just interlocks together to make this beautiful masterpiece. Okay, Chelsea, stop talking about it. I gave this 5 stars. The next book that I got to was our book club pick of the month, and that was Night Film by Marisha Pessl. So if you're curious about my thoughts on this, I will leave that video down below. Also, our Goodreads page will be linked down below if you're curious about what everybody else thought about it. I'm gonna stir up some controversy with this next review here, guys. So the next book that I got to was A Darker Shade of Magic by Victoria Schwab. I'm somewhat new to the V.E. Schwab, Victoria Schwab bandwagon. I read The Savage Song and really, really liked it. I've heard nothing but amazing stuff about this series. And while I think that the concept and plot of this book is awesome, I think that Schwab comes up with really interesting concepts in her stories. I didn't think that it was amazing. I know, guys. But I personally just didn't really connect to the characters. I connected to the world more than I did to the characters. I don't know. Kel was interesting, but I didn't really relate to him in any way. And I think his relationship with Lila was odd. I didn't really see an actual romantic relationship between them ever happening, even though I knew it was coming. I just don't think that they're good together. I don't know, guys. It just didn't blow me away like I expected. Maybe I had really high expectations going into this just because of the hype surrounding it. But I don't know, I just didn't click with it. I gave this 4 stars. The concept was very, very cool. Something was missing for me. The next book that I got to is 8,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. After that controversial review of A Darker Shade of Magic, I feel like everybody's gonna be like, what is this girl's thought process? because I loved this book. It is literally everything that I dislike about YA, but for some reason it just worked for me. Maybe I was just in the mood for like a cliche YA story, but I just really liked this story. It quite literally has every single trope in YA that I dislike. It has insta-love, it has a love triangle, it has a very predictable plot scheme. It has the standard YA formula. I mean, once you read enough YA, you kind of know how the books are gonna go. It was very predictable to me. It literally has every cliche that I hate in YA, but for some reason, I just really liked it. I think that I just really liked the concept of interdimensional travel that's brought up in this book, because it's a topic that hasn't really been touched in YA, and I always really like to see how different authors do that, especially in like a kind of like simplified YA version. I mainly liked the thought-provoking part on how one little thing can alter the reality of the world to the point where it may not have progressed technologically past like ancient Russian stage like it does in this, or how things may have progressed way further and that different drugs or medicine is around. I think I just like the thought-provoking aspect of this, and I just maybe was really in the mood for a very cliche YA book, and this happened to be it. So I gave this 4 stars. The next book that I got to is Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Niven. Jennifer Niven wrote All the Bright Places, which broke me emotionally, and I was prepared going into it. I knew that it was gonna be a rough emotional ride going into her next book, but it was not nearly as bad as the first one. But it definitely hits you right in the feels just as hard. This book follows 2 perspectives. It follows a boy who has prosopagnosia, which is essentially face blindness, which is kind of a mental, I don't want to say disorder, it's just a weird trait that he has, that he literally cannot process faces, even though he may have grown up with his family his entire life. If his brother were to change some weird identifier about him, like his hair or something, he would not recognize him, which is a very real thing, and I've read other stories about it. It's always very fascinating to me. And it also follows Libby, who is known as America's fattest teen. When she was much younger, she actually had to be cut out of her house because she was so obese, and that is how the people in her neighborhood and the people she grew up with know her. And it's about her after she lost a ton of weight and is re-entering high school. Both of these characters are just so unique, and their relationship and friendship together is so real and raw, and I just love how it was handled. Libby is like the most badass character. She was just so fun to read through, and I just think that she handles situations really well. They were very believable characters. Their relationship together was just so great. I love this book. It was one of those books I read in one sitting. You just couldn't put it down. You just wanted to know what happened to them. I gave it 4 stars. It was just so good. And the last book that I got to in the month of October, I probably should not have read in October. I probably should have waited a little bit because it definitely took me out of the Halloween mode. But I read What Light by Jay Asher. This is definitely a Christmas holiday story. And it put me in such the Christmassy mood that I read it the day before Halloween, and I just did not want to do Halloween stuff. I just wanted to put up Christmas lights and decorate a tree after reading this. So definitely read this going into the holidays if you want to get in the holiday mood. Outside of that, I personally did not like this book. I have read Jay Asher's other stuff, and I think that I'm just reading it at a point in my life that I am just kind of more mature than the characters, and I can't really relate to them anymore. Had I read this when I was on winter break, when I was like 14 years old, I probably just would have swooned all over the place and loved it to pieces. But being a 26-year-old adult now, I just didn't get it. It's a lot of kind of teen drama. It's a very quick read. It's a very quick winter holiday romance story if you're looking for that. I personally just did not agree with the relationship decisions that were made, and that her parents were just kind of okay with it. The boy in this, the romantic interest in this, has a very dark past, and in my opinion, it's not justified. It's one of those, like, he's a bad boy and he has a bad reputation in the town because of something that happened in his past. When you find out what it is, I don't think that it's okay. That may just be me, and I may just be building intrigue for this book, so if you guys are curious about what happened, go check it out. I only gave it 2 stars. I really, really liked the holiday mood that it put me in, and I definitely wanted to go to a Christmas tree lot after this. If you're looking for a holiday read that is coming up, because I'm filming this very late, if we're getting a lot closer to the holiday season, definitely pick this up. Just put yourself in a jolly mood, but let me know what you think about it. So I believe that that's all I read in October. There may be more, but it will be in my next wrap-up, because I have talked way too long in this video. 12 books is a lot of books to discuss in a video. Let me know what you read in the month of October, because I am slowly catching up on videos, so I'm sorry to all of you who I'm friends with that I haven't commented recently. I'm getting there. Just give me some time. I will catch up on all your videos. If you have anything specific that you want me to watch, let me know down below, and I will definitely go check it out and talk with you in your comment section. So that's gonna be it. I hope you read some amazing books this past month, and I will see you in my next video.